What's up, guys? So today we're going to be talking with Liam McEwan, and I just wanted to come on here before the podcast to say he is such a freaking awesome person, man. I love having these conversations with people, especially in the b.t.s community, because I realized that, we are all so much similar than we probably even recognize. It's been such a cool process going through and meeting people, and Liam especially, man. His mindset is something that I completely relate to, and I know a lot of other guests on our podcast have as well too. So I love seeing that type of mindset from him. Just loved having this conversation. It was cool getting some of these insights. So for real, I hope y'all enjoy this one. If y'all would like to check out more from Liam, I'm going to be leaving his links in the description of this video. And if y'all are new to our channel, please smash that sub button and let's get into today's episode of Breaking the Stereotype with Liam McEwan. Good, man. How are you doing?
I am so good, bro. It is so nice to be here with you. I'm excited to chat. We were just talking a little bit before we started, and I was saying I love your stuff.
Dude.
It's really cool to see. It's beautifully set up. It's beautifully professional. And I'm excited to chat, man. I'm excited to see what you've got for me. It's always weird when the interviewer becomes the interviewee.
Yeah, we're changing. We're turning the tables
switching. We're switching it around. But I'm excited, man. I'm excited to hear, what you have, because, for me, it's my job, it's my life, it's what I love doing. So it always amazes me that people are interested in that.
Yeah.
I didn't get into this to be, the star of the show. So it is really cool that people can resonate with the work and want to hear about it. It means a lot.
Yeah. Well, man, to be honest with you, the first time I heard about you, I had actually seen some of your interviews. I had no idea. And whenever people were telling me oh yeah, Liam's going to be at this event, I was like, I wonder if I've seen some of his stuff. And then there's so many interviews that you've done that I've actually seen. And I was like,
really?
What? Yeah, it's so wild, dude. So
it's such a trip.
Yeah, once I got into the Liam McEwan rabbit hole, I was like, wait a second, what? There's so many.
This.
yeah, dude.
Well, that's cool. Well, thank you. It blows my mind that the work is kind of part of that b.t.s lore in a way. Which is such, as I say, it's such a trip to me because I grew up, listening to and watching interviews of my favorite artists, the people that I grew up admiring.
Yeah.
So when people say, this interview, was one of the first things I watched when I was getting into b.t.s, I watched your interviews to learn more about my favorite member of the group, or things like that. That just means so much, because it's oh wow, that's literally the whole reason I wanted to get into this. So thank you for saying that. It's amazing that that the fans picked up on the interviews in such a special way.
Yeah. To be honest with you, once I started looking into your interviews, who all you've interviewed as well, you have such an extensive list of people that you've interviewed, man. And every time I'm all right, cool, we've got that. Then I see a person, I'm like, what? And now I'm not even surprised. I'm like, yeah, dude, he's interviewed anybody. You can say anyone now, and I'd be like, okay, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's wild, and that's one of the things I love about it, is that I never really wanted to stick to one necessary genre. I mean, obviously for a while with b.t.s, and it kind of expanded into this whole K-pop thing, and I kind of became known as a K-pop guy. But I love the fact that I can do b.t.s one day, and then I can go to the Oscars red carpet and interview these actors, and then I can go somewhere and interview a Beatle, and then I can be doing, things like that really excite me. I love the challenge of very different people and very different worlds, and it keeps me on my toes, being able to go from one thing to a complete opposite the next day. But it is. It's a thrill to be able to chat to such a diverse group of people and talents, because everyone has a story, and I always say that, and that's why I love it, is that you can speak to the most famous person in the world, or you can speak to a brand new up-and-comer who's just put out their first song, and to me it's just as interesting, because everybody has that story, right? Everybody is there for a reason. Everybody went through whatever they went through to get to that exact point, and my job is to get that out of them and to find that common ground and find where that conversation lands. So that's part of the fun for me, is people from different worlds and different universes. So, and ticking off people, it's like a bucket list at this point. It's I'm very lucky. I'm very grateful.
I love that, man. Well, so how did you actually get started in this career? Do you remember kind of the early phases of this, how it grew to what it is now?
Yeah, well, look, I was always that kid that would go to school, and this is in New Zealand we called it primary school, which I
Hmm.
think here is elementary.
Hmm.
I was that kid that was wearing I Heart Los Angeles t-shirts. Like I always knew that I wanted to be in the media world, that I
Oh, it's
wanted to
on the
come over
list.
here, and the first word that I ever spoke was light. So like my parents and my
Yes,
grandparents were always like, this kid like is gonna be like lights, camera, action.
I love it. I
Um,
love it.
and yeah, so I always knew that I wanted to get into media in some
Hmm.
way. One of my first Christmas presents that I remember from my parents was a digital or a film camera, and I was just shooting my own TV shows at home and hosting
Yeah.
my own
Oh God,
TV
yes.
shows and
I love
not
that.
doing anything with the content. I'd love to find that stuff, but yeah, I always knew that I wanted to be a host or a presenter or a
Mhm.
storyteller in some way, shape, or form. And then at age 13, I was walking down like a little esplanade in a local little city in Auckland, New Zealand, and found a community radio station.
Oh,
So
nice.
just broadcasting out to the community, small
Mhm.
audience, but I looked in the window and saw the mixing board and the
Yeah.
microphones and the headphones, and I was just like starry-eyed. I was like,
Yeah.
wow, like this is everything to me.
Mhm.
And I literally just knocked on the door, 13-year-old kid,
Dude,
and
I
was
love
like,
that.
can I come in and have a look at this? You know?
Yes, dude.
Um,
I love
and then
that.
next thing I knew, somehow, because it was a community station, he put his trust in me and said, "Hey, if you were to have a show, what would you do?" I told him, and then I had a radio show every week on volunteering on a small community radio station. So,
That is
and
everything though, man. I love that so much. Like
yeah,
you having the like I don't know, the inspiration, just like the personality to go up to him and be like, I love this. Like, can I check this out?
yeah,
And that is
yeah.
awesome on both y'all's parts. Him giving you a show
Yeah,
too, that's
thank
very
you.
cool.
I'm very grateful for him. His name was John as well,
Oh,
and he was just such a cool guy for letting me do that and letting me kind of experiment and figure out how I wanted to present myself on this show.
yeah.
And then I was doing that from like 13 to 18, so all
Oh,
throughout my high
nice.
school journey, I was hosting this community radio show, and it started to pick up, and I learned how to interact with fan bases
Mm,
on social, and then have people tune in and take requests. And I was doing smaller interviews like with
mm.
New Zealand artists, and it kind of just went from there. And then I got offered a job at iHeartRadio in New
Oh,
Zealand when
nice.
I had just left high school, was about to leave high school. And that was when I started to get paid for it.
Yeah,
Um,
there you go.
and then from there, yeah, it just kind of snowballed pretty quickly.
Mm.
From iHeart, and I started doing kids television in New Zealand, and then I once again shooted the shot at a magazine here in America called J14 magazine, which was like a teenage magazine
Hmm.
or like the teenage gossip. Uh, and I said, "Hey, do you need any video people to do interviews for you?" And this is when I was still living in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And they said, "Hey, yeah, if you ever want to do any content, just let us know." And I was like, "Great, I'll take advantage of this." I booked a flight to America and requested credentials to the
Oh,
Billboard Music Awards, got
yes.
that, and was just like, "Okay, I can do this.
Oh
This is
my
where I need to
God.
be."
Dude,
And
yes.
then, yeah, here I am. That was 2015, and now here I am, 2024, nearly a decade later. I moved in 2017, so I've
Mm.
been here for like 7 years. And now I'm a freelancer, so I'm just doing things for whoever
Mm.
wants me to do things. I'm doing a lot of things with the Associated Press, which is cool. So, yeah, sorry, you asked me how it began, but I gave you the whole story.
No, dude,
But
thank you. I
yeah, that was the journey.
I think the thing I love about that is so many people can relate to what you just said. Like, but it's that you jumping into it, man. Like from an early age, like you as a kid just being like, "Hey, what is in here? This is beautiful. I want to learn more."
Mhm,
And then like with J14. Actually,
mhm.
so I normally do little deep dives on some people, and I found some of your early J14 stuff where you did
Did
like
you now?
I think it was tips for prom. It was like prom
I
tips.
That's so embarrassing. That's so
Dude,
cringy and
I love
horrible. Well,
it.
see, like things like that, it's like no one ever likes looking at their early content or their
Oh yeah,
early
it's
work.
true.
But that was just kind of the grind that like I was doing for this company. Like I
Mhm.
said, "Do you want video stuff?" And they said, "Whatever you come up with."
Oh wow.
And I was just literally throwing things at them to get
Yeah.
exposure and to
Mhm.
get into these magazines and into these things. And that was one of my goofy little videos that
Dude,
I
I love
made
it.
back then.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, that was before I moved as well. So in New Zealand, obviously, there's not a lot of celebrity content that you can create because we have like two really celebrities there. So yeah, I was just doing random things like what can I think of? So I did like tips for going to prom. I did, celebrity news stories. I did dressing for Coachella guides, red carpet guides, like things like that, and would really just kind of come up with ideas to, as I say, get exposure, get myself into the magazines or into the digital space. And eventually I was like, I need to move to LA, because if I want to do this to the extent that I want to, I need to move. And because interviewing like was always number one, like that was always what I wanted to do in the space, like be able to talk to these people and create these stories and help fans get to know their favorite artists a little bit more. But yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate you doing a deep dive. That's very kind. It's nice. Well, and also I appreciate that as an interviewer, because I'm like, that's what I do. I go and do deep dives before I interview anyone. So good on you.
Dude, thank you. Well, have there been some people in the past who have inspired you, or like who as a kid you remember watching and being like, this is what I want to do? Like, is there somebody that might have done that for you?
Yeah, a lot of it was local New Zealand and Australian TV. So like I would watch like the after school shows and I would see, these people host, kids shows, and whenever a celebrity would come to town, I remember watching like them interview Justin Bieber or whoever was coming into town at the time and being like, this is so cool, because especially coming from New Zealand, it is so far away from pop culture and American culture. So seeing New Zealanders with big American A-listers just didn't seem like, it's like, how on earth can that happen? We're half of the world away. So yeah, all those after school shows, I used to want to be the host of those shows so badly. And then I ended up being able to do that on one of the shows. So that inspired me a lot, but also I love watching American TV. So I love watching like American Idol and seeing Ryan Seacrest, or watching Howard Stern, people like that, people who came into the industry and really like put their stamp on it. Because there are so many interviewers out there. There are so many people that host a radio show or do this or do that. But like, I like to look at those people like Ryan or Howard, and it's like, how did they create a personal brand, and how did they outshine everybody else? Like, what was it about these guys that put them in this place? And that's always been fascinating to me. Especially these days, it's like you can't just do one thing. You can't just host a radio show. You have to host a radio show and be on social and be on YouTube and be everywhere, because otherwise you just get lost in the crowd.
It's wild. Do you feel like, because there are these outliers kind of, and even in today, there's definitely some still like strong up and coming outliers of that culture. And but do you feel like even Howard Stern, for instance, very prominent pop culture icon, person that just transcended a person that's doing interviews and stuff, or a radio show host. He did like movies. He just did everything. And like, do you think that some of the ways that the early people did that was that they were everywhere, kind of, in a sense? They were doing everything?
Yeah, absolutely. That's how they got themselves out there. If you couldn't tune into the radio to listen to Howard's show, you may have seen his movie, or you may have read his book. Or with Ryan Seacrest, if you don't live in LA and couldn't listen to him on Kiss FM or wherever he is, like, you'd see him on American Idol, or you'd see him on this, or now, New Year's Rockin' Eve. So you do have to be everywhere. And that was then, right? So that was 90s, early 2000s. Now you have every media you want on your fingertips. You're on TikTok, you're on this, you're on this, you're on this. So it's just changed. And even in the 7 years that I've been living here, or the decade now that I've been in media, just watching the evolution has been so fascinating and so interesting. Because like when I got started, we were still on Vine,
Yes, dude,
So yeah, just a very interesting thing to observe how quickly it changes, and you can't predict where that next place is going to be, or what works or what doesn't. And everybody asks me, "Oh, what's the secret? How do you grow a following, or how do you do this?" And I'm like, look, if there was a secret, if there was a rule book, everybody would be doing it. It's just a lot of trial and error. It's just a lot of putting yourself out there, figuring out, as I just mentioned, how can you do something in a different way than other people are. And yeah, I also like to not even think of yes, I'm an interviewer and that's what I do, but I don't even think of it as an interview. I like to think of things as like more of a conversation, because that way it kind of brings people at ease. And no, sorry, I'm a rambler. You can say I'm a talker. This is why I do what I do, because I can yap for days.
Listen, our viewers are in trouble because I'm the same way. So
are you? Yeah, we'll just keep going.
It's all good, man. Well, so so we get over to America. How long until you actually met with, because everyone watching right now, huge BTS fans, how did that interview end up happening, your first BTS interview?
That happened the year I moved in 2017.
Wow.
And I was working with, J14 magazine at the time. And obviously that's the audience for it at the time. So I remember it so vividly too. Yeah. I was sitting at my laptop and I got an email from a publicist, and it was pitching, because I get entertainment journalists in general get pitches every day, sometimes hundreds.
Oh, wow.
You know, and I got this email and it said something along the lines of, new Korean boy band to watch, or something like that. And in the email, it said, hey, will you be at the Billboard Music Awards? Yes, I was going to be at the Billboard Music Awards. We're going to have this up-and-coming K-pop act there. Their name's b.t.s. They're going to be the biggest thing. Just watch out.
Yeah.
And I get so many, as I say, emails pitching things, but something about the email, I was like, this is interesting. Like I was saying earlier in the chat, like, I love the challenge of trying something new and, entering a new space. And I'd never interviewed a K-pop group before. Like, what would that be like? I knew basics of K-pop, barely the basics. Obviously, everybody knows things like Gangnam Style and all of that. But like, I couldn't like name you a group. So I was like, sure, let's see what this is. And obviously, every publicist thinks their group or their artist is going to be the next big thing. Yeah. But there was something about this, and I was like, this is really interesting to me. So I was there at the Billboard Music Awards. I said, yes, of course, bring them over. I was there at the Billboard Music Awards, and they come on over, and we have this chat. And I'd done a little bit of prior research, but it's the Billboard Awards. Like, I wasn't specifically there just to interview BTS. I probably had 20 interviews I had to do that day. So I couldn't specifically sit down and like spend hours on each interview. It was just like, okay, find out the basics and yap with them. Anyway, they come up to me, very friendly, very, very nice, very energetic, very shy as well, a little bit nervous maybe. And I do what I do and just turn on and go, hey guys, how you doing? And just try to bring them at ease. And at that point, I didn't know that only one of them was fluent in English. So I'm like looking around, like, who's going to answer the question? But very quickly, obviously, figured out that RM would kind of take the reins there. And it was interesting to watch that evolve as well over the years as well. We can get to that about how different members got more confident over time in terms of chiming in. But yeah, so that was the first interview, and I remember doing it. It went really well. I posted the photo on Twitter, put my phone in the pocket, and just kept doing the carpet.
Oh, gosh.
Carpet ends. I open Twitter, and I'm like, what? Like, what's this about? And at this point, I'd met, like, Ed Sheeran and Ariana Grande, and huge pop stars. Yeah. But I'd never seen a response like that. Yeah. And I remember thinking, like, okay, this is like out of control. Like, what is this? Yeah. And then the interview goes up and everyone loves it. And I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah. And because of the response to that, they were in town for like another week. The team reaches out and says, hey, want to come to their Airbnb or the house where they were staying at and interview them again. This time a bit longer, a bit more casual, not on a carpet. Yeah. I'm like, sure. Like, okay.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That gave me the opportunity to kind of dig deeper, right? And do more research and really look into things and watch the videos and get to know them. And the first music video that I watched of theirs that kind of blew me away was Blood, Sweat and Tears, which was big at the time. And I think Not Today may have like just come out. And I remember being blown away by those. because like I obviously had never seen anything like that.
Yeah. Was that
Yeah, go and do this interview. Sorry.
Was that one of your first dives into actual like beyond, like you were saying, like Psy with Gangnam Style? Was that one of your first like K-pop group?
Very much so, and especially coming from New Zealand, right? And as I say, this was the year that I moved. K-pop at the time didn't exist in New Zealand. Like maybe it was like bubbling here in the States, but like that is so far gone from what New Zealand is aware of culturally, musically. Like we barely get American hits. So we have our own like thing going on down there.
Nice.
Now obviously K-pop's huge and b.t.s was a huge catalyst towards that. But yeah, at the time didn't really know much. But Not Today, Blood, Sweat and Tears. I watched that. I was like, holy cow, this is like next level. And my favorite artist of all time is Michael Jackson. So I love performance and dance and visuals and energy. And this was giving that to me. I was like, whoa, like I'm seeing this crazy energy that I love from my artists that I enjoy. So anyway, I do the research, I go to this house, and this time it's, as I say, a lot more casual because we're in a house and there's no like red carpet and all these photographers and videographers. It's just myself, my camera guys, the group, and at the time, the entire of the Big Hit Company.
Oh my God.
Which was crazy because it was only like 20 people. Considering like what it's grown into now. You know? That's, you know, been crazy to kind of watch as well. But so that interview was a lot more casual. You know, it was, I probably spent an hour there at that house with them. You know, we were chatting away, and as I say, that kind of turned into more of a conversation than an interview. And I remember them being taken aback by how much research I'd done, which to me was just kind of the norm of what I do as an interviewer. But I don't think they'd really experienced that at this time. So at one point I'm talking about their charitable work, and I bring up how they donated tons of rice to wherever it was. And Namjoon just goes, "You did your research," and turns to the group and like says that to the guys, and they're like shocked. I'm like, yeah,
that's awesome.
Of course I did my research. Like, what do you? I'm not going to come to this unprepared. But no. So that was that, and then during that interview, like as I say, at the time, this was just another day kind of in my job, in my life. I would be going out to things and interviewing people every day at this point. So it was like, it was just another interview. Obviously I knew there was going to be some traction on it because what I'd seen from my Twitter posts at the billboards, but like I wasn't like a hardcore stan at that point. I was just like, it's just another interview. And so I was very much myself, and I have always been myself throughout my interviews, but like I'd be goofing around with them and making jokes. And something I learned very quickly was, because they couldn't necessarily understand what I was saying, I had to use physical
body language
cues, body language, right? And that can be understood by anyone anywhere, I think. Body language, you know, if I'm happy and enthusiastic, they'll be happy and enthusiastic. And at one point during the interview, I like put my arms up and like waved and was like, whoa, when talking about the crowd's reaction to them at the Billboard Awards. And that kind of made them lose their minds. They thought it was hilarious.
I love it.
And
that's awesome.
My cheeks went all red. I was like, okay, like that got a bigger laugh than I thought it would. But it was in that moment where I realized, like, okay, like I can goof around with these guys. You know, it brought their guard down a heck of a lot. That was the interview where I was like, oh, okay, like we're gonna get along really well. And then after that, you know, the camera shut off, and I stayed in the house with them for a while, and Namjoon and I were chatting away about New Zealand because he studied there for a few months, and I was chatting with V for a bit. He was fascinated by my hair and was like pulling at my curls.
Oh, nice.
But you know, it was, and then we had Taco Bell together. So it was that was a really crucial period of time for numerous reasons. Number one, it was just me getting to know them. them getting familiar with me and my style.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we're all of a similar age. And I think they appreciated just that energy being brought to the table.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was the first two big interviews that happened within days of each other. And that's how it got started. And then from there, that interview went up and kind of just had its own legs and did its own thing.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful for that. But yeah, no, that I was very grateful and blown away at the reaction to that. And I'm glad that it resonated with people.
Yeah.
And then, from that moment onwards, every time they would release something, or every time, you know, they had something to say, I was lucky enough to get the call.
Dude, that's awesome, though.
So yeah, that's how it got started.
Yeah. The wild thing is, that reminds me so much of like a lot of reactors' journey into b.t.s. Like, obviously yours is very much more hands-on. It's relatable, I think, very how a lot of people, including myself, got into them. Like, with our first reaction being your first interview, not necessarily knowing the extent of what you were getting into. Like, my friend was just like, hey, check out this. And I was doing reactions already. And I'm like very metal based is like my, you know, like fan
is your
base.
vibe usually.
Yeah. So I was like, I don't know, no research at all into it. And they dropped me into like outro tier. And I was like, well, this is way different than I thought it was going to be. And then Army's reaction to my reaction was like completely unexpected as well too. I was like, wait, what? So
yeah, like what's going on? That's cool. And like also one of the things that fascinates me about b.t.s and K-pop in general, but especially b.t.s, is like, as you say, it might not be the style of music that you're used to, but there is something about it that is just so captivating and interesting, and they bend genres so wonderfully and beautifully. Like, one album is, you know, rock infused, and then the next is pop, and then they've got disco, and then they've got R&B, and then they've got like hip hop and rap, and they really do span so many different genres. And that's, I think, you know, testament to obviously the different talents of the seven guys. But yeah, it's interesting that you say that it kind of just happened for you in that sense, because I think a lot of people don't like expect to get into it, and then it's just one exposure and the floodgates opened. And, you know.
So post this second interview where you actually get to meet and hang out with him for a while, like, when would you say after that you become like, well, I guess a good question to start with is like, are you a fan of their music? Like, would you consider yourself Army, or like, where are you with that term in your life?
I am 250% an Army.
Boom. Okay.
Of course. I wouldn't have been able to be as deep into this world if I wasn't like a hardcore Army, because it takes, you know, people see it and they're like, oh, you know, he's having fun, he's interviewing them, but it takes so much work to do these interviews. So to be this deep into the world, yes, I definitely have to be an Army.
Heck yeah.
But the point where it happened would probably be, I think, my third interview. There were so many interviews with them at this point, I kind of forget what orders they're in. So I have to like think about the albums and be like, what album were we promoting and what order did they come out in?
Yeah.
But it was around when they came here for the AMAs. They were performing. They were doing their first TV performance, and it was DNA.
Oh wow!
At the AMAs, and perfect. I think the DNA video came out, and I was like, "That's it!" Like, you know, I went from like just being an appreciator to being like, "This is like so cool."
Yeah.
Because that video was just like, next level.
Yeah. I couldn't even imagine being like a fan of theirs at the time when all these were coming out, and then seeing that and be like, okay, because it must have felt like this was like changing the world of music in a way, you know?
Yeah. And as I say, like at that point, I was reporting on everyone and doing interviews with everyone under the sun, and like I just hadn't seen anything like I had with b.t.s. Whether it be the marketing, whether it be the music, the visuals, the performance, the people, the team that they were working with, the fans, obviously, like it was just so amazing to me. I was in awe of it. But yeah, I think when DNA came out, that's when I was like, oh, okay, like I'm really starting to get into this thing, like interviewer aside, like as a person, like I'm really starting to dig this. And then by the time they released Love Yourself Tear, and I sat down with them to do that interview. I was full on wearing the BTS Love Yourself hoodie. I had my BTS little notebook.
Yes, man. There you go.
And then at the start of the interview, I bring it out and Jin goes, "Are you ARMY?" And I'm like, "Of course I'm ARMY." So like I was very much like, yeah, at that point, fully into it.
Yes.
And they kept, I feel like they kept catering to me because when Dynamite comes out, it's like so Michael Jackson. So it was just like everything that came out, everything that they did, I was just like, it just worked and it clicked with myself personally, but obviously armies all around the world. And it just kept getting bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that blew me away as well. It was like, you think they can't get any bigger, but then they just like did.
Yeah.
Like when they did, Love Yourself tier and the Love Yourself tour, it was just like, how could you possibly get any bigger than this? They were doing like 3 or 4 shows at the Staples Center, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. And then it was like 4 or 5 shows at SoFi. So like, it was such an interesting thing to watch. And also like part of the part that like fascinates me as well, especially when I'm talking about it, I realized that like my BTS journey was not typical at all.
No,
like by the time that I became a hardcore like ARMY, I knew the guys, right? So like,
I mean, that's amazing.
It was just a very weird like situation or dynamic to get into. And to be honest, there was a point where I kind of took a step back because I was like, okay, it's starting to feel like a job. K-pop in general, not BTS specifically, but K-pop in general just started to feel like a bit of a job. But then I quickly snapped out of that and realized exactly how lucky I am to be able to do this. But I have a very interesting relationship with K-pop. But of course, I'm an ARMY through and through.
But I think that's one thing that people sometimes don't really realize, especially like watching the post, you know what I mean? Watching it after the interview is done and stuff. Like you saying you do a lot of research into bands. Like going into that second interview with BTS, how many hours would you say that you poured over content and just going through it?
Each interview varies, but like things like interviews like that, big ones where I know like, fan bases are really expecting this to be a good interview. And then obviously as I became the BTS interviewer, the pressure was on me to like do a good interview.
I can only imagine, especially as a fan base crew.
Everyone's like, oh, Liam's going to do another interview. I bet it's going to be great. And I'm like, well, it better bloody be great.
Hopefully it's great. Yeah. Like, do y'all know something I don't yet?
Yeah. So that like, and people always ask like, well, do I get nervous? And it's like, no, the nerves for me aren't meeting the people. It's like doing a good interview, getting a good interview, especially with, as I say, the fan base. But very grateful that it's always resonated. But how much research? Like, usually I'll sit down, like even if it's someone like Tomorrow by Together, I will sit down and spend a whole day just like, coming up with questions. And a lot of the time as well, like I'll come up with, I know what I want to ask, but I'll have 5 different ways of asking it. And I'll be like, okay, well, I like how I started the question there, but I like how I ended the question there, and then I'll merge them and then I'll reword things. And
oh, that's awesome.
So there's an art to it, It's like, how do I form the perfect question? And especially when interviewing someone like BTS, it's like, obviously, as I've talked about, there's the language barrier. And not in those early interviews, but in the later interviews, there was a translator, right, on site.
That is awesome.
I would ask the question. The question would go to a translator. It would get translated to them in Korean. They would answer. Their answer would get translated in English back to me. So part of the challenge was, how do I craft a question that doesn't get lost in that translation? So that's part of the fun as well. I love it. There's a thrill to that. Coming up with the perfect question, and then when you have it, it's just like, yes, I've like. Sometimes I will spend hours on one question, just coming up with the wording and crafting it, and just
that is so cool,
because the slight change of one word could affect the answer. So, and also I like to give my questions a little bit of a I like to load it. So like I'll give the context. I'll give the
Mm-hmm.
context of the question and then launch into the question.
I love that.
I do that for a couple of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, I've always got to presume that someone watching this, it might be their first time. They may not know the history of whoever it is that I'm speaking with. And number two, if I do ramble a little bit, it gives the star or the artist the opportunity to think a bit longer rather than just like question, answer.
Yeah.
It's like little context, little fact, hit them with the question.
Yeah.
But also, like, I've already got, I don't have an interview with BTS lined up, obviously. They're busy right now. But I already have questions in my notes app for, like, what I want to ask them next time.
Yeah.
So, like, sometimes I'm thinking years in advance.
I
like,
love that. I love knowing that.
Artists talk about, like, how, you know, they'll wake up in the middle of the night and, you know, they'll have a song lyric in their head and they'll have to go right down. That's me with questions. I could be on a plane or walking down the street and it's like, oh my gosh, here's a great question for this person. Whether it be someone that I know I'm about to interview or someone that I don't have any plans to, but it's like, when I do interview them, I've got a banger lined up. I've got a banger in my back pocket to bring out. So,
dude, I love that so much, man.
It never sleeps. It never dies. So to answer your question, like there isn't a set amount of time of like how long I'll be doing it, but there have been times where I've been sitting down and it's taken like weeks to conceptualize exactly how I want things to come across. And then also that interview I was talking about for Love Yourself Tier, where I had the hoodie and the booklet, like all of that I had to like plan out. So it took like a week of planning. Like also, how do I approach this without being too gimmicky? Without, you know, taking the piss. Like, how do I come across as genuine and show my genuine interest, but be funny and have a joke? Because as I learned from the interview where I went, whoa, they react to physical humor. And it worked, luckily. But yeah, there's just a lot of different elements and things that go into it. And I appreciate you asking about that, because it's like, there is a lot more than people just kind of think would go into it.
Well, what I like about your answer to that is it seems like you've just got a very like a perfectionist brain and mindset, but also whenever it comes down to it, like you've either practiced enough, you've wrote and thought about it enough that whenever you get there, you're not faking something. You actually just get to be you. Turn on, like you said. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Thank you. It definitely is a perfectionist brain. It's OCD brain.
I see that a lot in like very, very similar to how I think. So I'm like, I love that. That's cool.
Same brains, but I it definitely it's a work in progress, and sometimes I'll leave an interview, like the interview that did the best from BTS, the Love Yourself Tier one that I've been talking about. I left that and I was like, that was the worst interview I've ever done.
Oh no.
I botched it. It was horrible. I was sitting in downtown LA where it was just sulking for an hour, just being like, that was so bad. And then I pieced it together. And also what people don't know is there was a translator on that interview, but I cut them out of the cut.
Oh,
it like ruins the flow. But I think also because, as you can see, I like to talk, the flow just like kind of goes off, right? When I'm so bubbly and I ask my question, and then translate, it's just I'm sitting there like twiddling my thumbs, just like da-da-da. Then they'll answer in Korean. I'm like, I wonder what they just said. And then it will come back and I'll be like, oh, great. Anyway, on to the next question. So it's just, And then I piece it together, put it up. It did like 1 million in less than 24 hours. And I was just like, oh, okay, people like this, like good. And like phew, but that's the pressure that you put on yourself. You always have that pressure, those afterthoughts. You question yourself. You go through all of that, and I'm no different. And that just shows like to not think like that, because it really, really, really resonated with fans, and that's probably the interview that people come up to me the most and say like that interview like got me into them. Or, you know. So I appreciate that.
I think one thing that you, an interview that you did with him, and it was, you asked him a question there at a panel, and Aryam gave this one, and for me, this is like a famous thing that he said, but you asked him a question about how they dealt with their success, like newly found, just massive success that they had, and Aryam answered that with the whole 100% success story, and I thought that was like, that's something that's resonated with me, and that's something that you brought out of them, so thank you for that, on like my behalf, because like, that's something that I look at a lot now. I think a lot about that, and so I think that's cool.
Cool. I'm glad that resonated with you. Because like when I asked that question, that was just something that I was just genuinely myself fascinated in. Like, how do you deal with all of this? And I think, I was the right person to ask that, considering that I had been there for that journey and seen them go from this to this. So that answer really, really, really blew me away.
I like it.
And there's been a couple of times where RM will just, and they didn't know in advance that that's what I was going to ask. So the fact that RM can naturally, like, from the top of his head, come up with something like that.
Yeah.
But I will say, in person, when he was like saying that, I was like trying to do the maths in my head. I was like, I'm just trying to like put these numbers 100%?
Together. 100%.
Yeah, just putting it together. Yeah. Obviously, I understood what he was saying, but no, it was very interesting, and
that's awesome.
He's so right. It is. It's a teamwork thing. Obviously, the 7 guys, but good on him for being gracious and thanking Big Head and Hybe, and because it really is a team project. There is not one person that is solely responsible for that journey. And I think those words mean a lot coming from the leader of the group as well.
Very much.
He could have easily been like, I'm the leader. I love to run the ship, but that's just not who he is and not who they are.
I love that.
So good on him.
Heck yeah. Well, man, we actually have some fan questions for you if you're up for it. Yeah. People are like, you've got who coming going? Oh my God. So,
please. I can't wait.
Heck yes. So the first one that we've got is from b.t.s OT7, and she said, how did you get on the b.t.s crosswalk concert? Do you remember how that instance happened?
Yes, I do. So I always forget that I was in that. And like someone will like bring it up on Twitter, and I'm like, oh yeah. No, so we got some intel that it was happening. That's what would be going on. And we were like, we should go watch it because it's just down the road from where I am. Why wouldn't we?
Yeah.
So we went down to watch it, and we were watching, I think they were doing Butter, and they did Permission to Dance, and the last one that they filmed was Dynamite. And I was there with my girlfriend and a couple of our friends. And I don't know who suggested it. They were like, should we get in the car and like stop and just be like there? And we were like, yeah, but you'd have to like time it right? So we were like, okay, let's see if we can do it.
Yeah.
So I think it took a couple of tries of like pulling out of, there was like a gas station and like pulling up there. And eventually we got to a point where we were one car behind, and we were like, this is great. I popped out of the sunroof. My girlfriend literally got out of the car.
Yeah.
One of my friends was flailing out of the windows. And it was a very natural, like excited moment. But as I say, we got the intel, but
that is so funny.
Being in it itself was not planned. There was no like special. People thought I was like in cahoots with them to get to be in it. No, I got told about it, knew about it, and was like, let's do this. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Like, why would we not? And there was no one else trying to do that. And then we did it. Everyone saw that we did it, and because they didn't film it in the order that it's shown. They filmed Dynamite last. I think they put Permission to Dance last in the video, but people after us were like, oh, we should do that too. I just don't think people even like registered of doing that. But it was like finessing the timing and like, okay, so when are they going to run out? When does the light go off? But there was no like big plan to get in that. But
that goes...
and people always ask me, they're like, did b.t.s see you in that? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I have no idea.
That's so awesome though. Well, I mean, dude, that goes back to that thing that we were talking about at the very beginning of this. Like, you have this kind of let's do it mentality. And I love that. That's going to a lot of your successes, I think, is like that type of brain set. You're just like, all right, let's do it.
Why not? Like, try. You know, you never know. Like, if you don't try something, it's not going to happen.
Exactly, dude. Exactly.
You know, but it was very exciting to, you know, be out of that sunroof and have them, you know, just a couple of meters away performing Dynamite, which, as I mentioned earlier, is one of my favorites because of the Michael influence. So like to see that from that perspective, yeah, it was just a cool thing to be a part of.
Dude, I
And
love
yeah,
that.
I always forget that happened, but yeah, that
Yeah.
was a trip.
All right, so we've got this one is a kind of a short question actually, but it's from our homegirl Joyce, and she
Hi,
asked,
Joyce.
yeah, she asked, do you have any hair plan or hair change plans in the future? You got any change of hair?
Is that a hint?
I
Should
don't
I
know.
change my
Yeah,
hair?
what are you saying, Joyce?
No, I'll tell you what, Joyce. Thank you for asking because like I haven't changed my hairstyle forever.
It
I
works,
think the
man. It
last,
works.
thanks, bro. Thanks. The last time I had short hair would have been when I was like 9 and
Yeah,
I'm 28 now. So a long time ago.
yeah,
Um, like I actually have thought about that. Like, what would I do if I was to change it? But I also feel like I would look so goofy if I had anything but long hair. Like, I'm never going to have short hair. That's for sure.
yeah,
But like, yes, I could style it differently. I could, but like, also, I'm not a hair care specialist. So if there are any
yeah,
hair care specialists that have any ideas for me,
yeah,
I'm all ears. Let me know. Um,
yeah. What are
but
you
also,
suggesting, Joyce? That's the good
yeah,
question
no,
maybe to ask here. We got to
no,
ask
it's
her a question.
You know what, Joyce? I appreciate it. If you have any ideas for me, let me know. What do you think would work? But also it has become kind of like a brand thing for me, a
Yeah,
recognizable kind of thing. Like people will recognize me from behind at things because they know they're here.
yeah.
Um, so in that sense, it has been like a branding tool.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but open to suggestions, very much open. And people like it. Also, when I met Britney Spears,
Oh my
she told me that
God,
she loved my hair. So like,
it's
why would
Britney.
I change it? If Britney loved it, it worked.
V
You
was
know,
playing with it. Britney
B was
loves it,
playing with it.
dude. It.
BTS loved my hair. Britney
Yeah.
Spears loves my hair. Why would I change it?
I would get
But
an
seriously,
insurance plan on your hair if we were
yeah,
being
no,
honest.
exactly,
Okay, so
exactly,
yeah. Sorry,
exactly.
Joyce.
But look, if there are any suggestions, hit me up. I'm all ears. Just not short because I can't do short.
I, I love it, man. I love it. Um. Okay, so and then here we go. Our final fan question is: what is your favorite BTS interview if you do have one?
That I've done.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great question. They all mean a lot to me for different
Mm-hmm.
reasons. For example, like the Jingle Ball one that I did means a lot because I was the only person that they spoke to on that trip.
Mm-hmm.
And they made a specific effort to come up and talk. So, like, because of that, personally, it means a lot.
Yeah.
But I think the press conference that you mentioned for permission to dance, like that was very cool
Yeah.
as well. But I would have to say my favorite interviews probably it would have to be the Love Yourself tier one.
Oh.
The one that I was just talking about where I left and was like, that was the worst thing I've ever done.
Uh.
But, now that I watch it back and I can kind of watch it from a different point of view, it's like
so I had been doing Pimsleur and like trying to read katakana and hiragana and different things like that. And so I'm like really trying to take it in. And I've learned at this point like how to say some really basic phrases, you know, like how to hold a starting off conversation.
Nice.
So there's a cafe really close to our hotel, and it's the morning, had some coffee. I'm about to be leaving, and I hadn't really had like the nerves yet to try to say anything Japanese to a Japanese person yet, because I'm like terrified. And so I get there, okay? Coffee's in me. I'm like, we're leaving this place, me, my wife, our two friends, and I look over at my wife. I'm like, watch this. And
here I go. It's time.
Yeah. And I was like, Ohayou gozaimasu. And I said something along the lines of, it's good weather we're having today, because the day before it rained, and so today it's shiny. And so I was like,
classic banter, classic chat. Just throw it at them, see if it sticks.
And I said it with like just all the confidence in the world. Looked over at my wife. I'm like, and then the lady's like, and I was like, and I repeated it, and she was like. And I was like, oh God. I was like, English? And she was like, no. And I was like, Japanese? And she was like, no. And she was like, I'm Korean. I'm from Korea. I was like, what? The one time I tried to speak Japanese.
You tried so hard. And you had an audience too.
Yeah. And then my wife pulled the Mr. One-Uppy on me, and she said, "Kamsahamnida," or whatever, hello in Korean. And I was like, so not only am I ego crushed, my wife
ego
just
crush,
one-upped
bro.
me.
Sometimes the ladies just know what's up though. They know how to bring you out of situations like that.
Yeah.
Good on you, man, for trying. Good on you. You put yourself out there and like really, you threw it out there. But hey, there's always more trips and more time to ask people how the weather is.
Yes.
Or tell them that you're having a lovely weather today.
Next time. I'm coming back to that cafe.
Yeah,
I'm going to try it. I love it, man. Well, so do you have any future plans? You got anything on the books that you can tell our audience about, or?
It's a great question. I am living every day as it comes. Who the heck knows what tomorrow brings? I
love that.
A lot of the stuff, as I mentioned earlier, I'm working with the Associated Press, which is cool. So we're doing a lot of red carpets and different interviews there. I've been doing a lot of live streams with Universal Music, which has been a lot of fun. Awesome. Kind of dipping my toes into random other little projects that I can. But a lot of my big interviews I don't even know about until like the night before.
Oh wow!
Which is crazy, but also part of the thrill. So it's like I could say I have nothing planned this week, and then all of a sudden in 2 days I'm with like one of the biggest stars on the planet. So it really kind of works that way. But I like it like that. I like being kept on my toes. And but in terms of future plans, like I just want to keep interviewing, and I want to keep telling stories and getting stories out of people. And as I say, I'm a fan of these things myself. Like I feel so lucky and grateful to be able to speak to these people, because I know so many people would like to be in that position to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So I don't take it for granted. And that's one of the reasons as well, like when it is someone with a big fan base like b.t.s, it's like I want to go in and give the best interview, because it's like there are so many people that would want to be here doing this. Like I want to do it justice for them and for the fans. And I just want to keep doing what I do, man. I didn't move halfway around the world to not. So future plans are just as many interviews as I can, and hopefully just tick off all those names that I want to. And I'm very lucky in saying that a lot of the people that I have wanted to interview I've kind of ticked off. So very grateful.
Man, I love that so much. And I'm sending you all the positivity, dude. It's
Thank
coming
you,
your way. It's just going to keep happening.
I'm feeling it. I'm receiving it. It means a lot. It really does.
Heck yeah, man. Well, again, dude, thank you very much for blessing us with your presence on here today. It has been awesome sharing your stories with us. And I don't know, man. I can't wait to see what the future holds for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Please hit me when you're in LA. I would love to be face to face. Your energy is contagious.
Oh, dude,
we have much more to chat about. But congrats on what you're doing too. Your setup is amazing. Dude. Your pod is great. The variety of content that you have is wonderful.
Thank you, man.
And I yeah, I noticed that and I admire that. So giving you your props, man. Well done.
Dude, thank you very
I
much.
appreciate your research as well. Like, thank you for doing the dive
Yeah.
and looking into it, and your kind words about my work. And to the armies that are watching, like, thank you for sticking with me and enjoying the content. And I just hope that, yeah, the stuff has resonated. And I look forward to seeing the guys again whenever that moment arises. And I promise that I will give them the best interview that I possibly can. So thank you. And also, like, another note, they are the nicest guys in the world. So, like, everybody that, like, stands them, you stan the right people. Like, I just wanted to say that because, like, they are actually genuinely, like, very good guys. So
that is freaking awesome hearing that, dude. Thank you for sharing that, man. Liam, everybody.
Woo!
Yeah.
Thank you, John.